Back in the day, my friends and I used to hang out near this old storm drain at the edge of our neighborhood. It wasn't anything special, just a big concrete opening where all the rainwater drained from the streets, but for some reason, it became our spot. We'd ride our bikes down there after school, sometimes just mess around, daring each other to go deeper inside, typical dumb kid stuff. There was always this heavy metal grate covering the entrance, but someone, probably older kids, had pried it open years before we discovered it. So it was just this dark tunnel that went on for who knows how long. The thing is, none of us ever had the guts to go too far inside. The light only went so far, and after that, it was pitch black. You could hear the sound of water trickling, echoing off the walls, but it always felt like something more was in there, like the darkness had weight to it. One afternoon, it started to rain pretty heavily. My friends and I were heading home when Jason, the fearless one in the group, suggested we check out the storm drain again. "Bet it's overflowing," he said, laughing. The rest of us were hesitant. We'd all heard the stories about kids getting trapped in storm drains when they filled up, but Jason was already biking toward it. Not wanting to be called chicken, the rest of us followed. By the time we got there, the rain was coming down hard. The entrance to the drain was still open, but water was rushing into it faster than usual, flowing into the darkness. Jason stood at the edge, looking down like he was sizing it up. "You think it's full down there?" he asked. Before we could stop him, he jumped down into the drain. The water was up to his ankles and it was rising fast. The rest of us stayed on the edge, yelling at him to get out, but he just laughed and said, "Come on, it's fine." He started walking deeper into the tunnel, his footsteps echoing louder than they should have in a space like that. We all stood there, unsure of what to do. The rain was picking up, and the last thing any of us wanted was to be down there if the water rose any higher. I was about to turn back when Jason shouted something from inside the drain. His voice bounced off the walls, but it didn't sound right. It sounded kind of muffled, like something was in there with him. "Guys, you need to come down here," he yelled. The rest of us exchanged looks. "Jason, get out of there," I called back, but he didn't answer. Instead, I could hear his footsteps getting faster, like he was running deeper into the tunnel. I hesitated for a second before hopping down into the drain, the cold water splashing up my legs. "Jason!" I yelled, stepping toward the opening of the tunnel. I couldn't see him anymore, but I could hear him, his voice echoing in the darkness. But now he sounded different, more frantic. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but I could hear him stumbling through the water. I was about to go in after him when something stopped me. A noise. It was faint at first, but then it grew louder, coming from deep inside the tunnel. It wasn't Jason. It was a scraping sound, like metal being dragged along the concrete, echoing toward me. There shouldn't have been anything metal down there. I yelled for Jason to get out, panic rising in my throat. But instead of Jason's voice, I heard something else. A faint whisper, almost like a breath, but it wasn't coming from the tunnel. It was coming from behind me. I spun around, expecting to see one of my friends messing with me, but they were all still standing at the top, wide-eyed, staring into the drain. "Did you hear that?" one of them asked, but I couldn't answer. My stomach turned as I realized what I heard wasn't coming from outside the tunnel. It was coming from inside it. I took a step back, closer to the opening, and called out for Jason one last time. This time, I didn't hear his voice. Instead, the scraping sound grew louder, like it was right there in the darkness. Then, from somewhere deep in the tunnel, I heard what sounded like something splashing through the water. Not footsteps, something bigger, something moving toward me. I panicked and turned to climb out of the drain, but just as I did, I heard Jason's voice, clear as day, right behind me. "Hey, where are you going?" he asked, but when I turned back, there was no one there. I climbed out as fast as I could, almost slipping in the rain, my heart pounding. My friends were already running for their bikes, and I didn't need any more convincing to get out of there. We didn't stop until we were halfway back to our neighborhood, panting and soaked. When we finally caught our breath, I asked, "Did any of you see him come out?" They all shook their heads. We went and told our parents, and a search party went back early the next morning when the rain had stopped enough. All of us went with to help search, feeling extreme guilt for leaving him, desperately hoping he was okay and somehow made it out. When we arrived back at the drain, it was dry, just a trickle of water left. But after hours of searching, Jason was gone. We called his name, searched the area, even places you wouldn't think to look, but there was no sign of him. Everyone was devastated and the search was called off. Things were weird for a long time after that, just not the same, and it took a long time for anyone to be able to talk about what happened that day. And I must admit, sometimes I still hear his voice in the back of my head, asking that same question. Where are you going?